Welcome back to Football Daily, ladies and gentlemen, where today we're talking about completed transfers. Yes, I'm back after a week away at Glastonbury. Boy, did it take its toll on my body, and boy, did I miss a lot of transfers. That's right, we're up to 16 completed Premier League transfers, if you include the likes of Sandro Tonali and Declan Rice, which I'm obviously gonna for today's video. With those 16 completed transfers, I'm going to be putting them into 4 different categories. The number one so far, my signing of the summer as of the 30th of June. Smart moves, confusing moves, and players, transfers, I'm just not really convinced about. Let's start with the big one. The one that's been making all the headlines this week. £105 million man. Declan Rice joining Arsenal, £100 million with £5 million in bonus payments. Oh, that's eye-watering. But this is Arsenal's number one target. I don't think anybody's going to argue it is a bit of an overpay. Maybe £15 million of overpay there. But they're getting a 24-year-old England international who has started, I think, 93% of the last 200 available games. All 12 of England's last 12 games at major international tournaments. And a player that's clearly improving. Because not only is he a defensive midfielder, he's also a player that can progress the ball, becoming something more of a box-to-box midfielder. I thought it was likely he was going to play in that sort of Xhaka left-hand side role, but with the arrival of Havertz, who we're going to talk about in a second, maybe it seems he's going to be playing more of a reserve role. I kind of see Arsenal moulding a little bit like Man City next season, where they go to that 3 at the back system. Then maybe they play the 2 slightly more defensive-minded midfielders. Maybe one of them's a Zinchenko Timber style player, and one of them's Declan Rice, and then they play 2 number 10s in Havertz and Ødegaard with the winger and a striker. I can see them going to that system. And I think Rice, the beauty of him is he unlocks lots of different ways. He can play as a defensive midfielder. He can play as a box-to-box 8. Hell, if worst came to the worst, he could also be utilised as some sort of makeshift centre-back. So yeah, Declan, I'm kind of tempted to put him in the number one signing so far, but because I think it's a bit of an overpay, not a massive one, and I think Arsenal are probably right to do it. It also is a statement of intent to kind of go, Man City, get back. Get him back. It's a statement of intent, isn't it? They've gone out, they've got their man. I think it's a smart move. As for Kai Havertz, I think on the face of it, you probably put it in confusing, wouldn't you? Because he's traditionally been playing as this sort of false 9 player at Chelsea, not necessarily the player he was at Leverkusen. It feels like he's now going to be shifted into that left-hand side number 8 role that was obviously previously being occupied by Granit Xhaka. And there's certainly traits that make you feel like he would fit there. I mean, I think back to last season. For me, his best performance was probably Dortmund at home when he played as more of a number 10 than a striker with Sterling up front, and he was kind of playing off him. I thought that was his best performance of last season. I think in terms of off-the-ball runs into the box, only Haaland completed more last season, so he's going to arrive late in the box. You can see him scoring quite a few goals with those sort of late arrivals, but he doesn't have the defensive nous of Granit Xhaka. I think that's very, very clear. Granit Xhaka offers an awful lot more going backwards. Kai Havertz offers an awful lot more going forwards. There's no doubt, technically and talent-wise, Kai Havertz for a 24-year-old is sensational. Can Mikel Arteta guide him in that number 8 role? Make him a little bit more defensively sound? Probably. You know, it might be a smart move, but I just think for 65 million, and because we're not 100% sure how he's going to be utilised right now, it's confusing on the surface. It's probably in this little gap here, somewhere between smart move and confusing. Let's go to Youri Tielemans. I think this one is a smart move. I think it's about the right level for Youri Tielemans. I don't think he necessarily had the physicality to go to, Liverpool or Manchester United, although they probably could have done an awful lot worse. At Villa, I think it adds great depth, adds great competition to a midfield that's improving massively. Jacob Ramsey, Boubacar Kamara, Douglas Luiz, John McGinn towards the back end of the season under Unai Emery really refound his best form. And let's not forget, he's still only 28. So you have those 4 players competing for those 3 positions. I think that's an exciting time to be an Aston Villa fan. The issue you've got with Youri Tielemans is, how was he going to do after a season of semi-phoning it in? I don't want to say phoned it in, but it was certainly his worst season in a Leicester shirt last year. Now, was that simply down to the fact his contract was running low, Leicester as a team was struggling, or was that down to other external factors? It remains to be seen, but on the surface of it, free transfer, I think it's a very smart move. Another Aston Villa signing that is not completed as of now, but it's all but done. The fee was agreed yesterday. Personal terms, not a problem. Pau Torres coming in from Aston Villa Real, I know he said then. Just coming in from normal Villarreal, who's of course worked with Unai Emery, hasn't he? Extensively. Europa League winner, good age profile, and again, great competition. So I've stuck him in smart move. I think given he's left-footed, he can compete with Tyrone Mings. Mings was one of Aston Villa's players of the season last year, particularly when Unai Emery took charge. He really refound his best form back into the England setup. But having Pau Torres there gives him a bit of competition. You know, Tyrone Mings otherwise could be playing every minute of every game. Of course, they've got European football to deal with as well next season, Villa. And again, like Tielemans and like that midfield quartet I was talking about, now you've got a central defensive quartet, haven't you? Diego Carlos and Konsa competing on the right-hand side. Pau Torres and Mings competing on the left-hand side. That's sensational stuff. With Cameron Archer coming back into the fold and maybe pushing for a little chance to start every now and then, I think if they can add a right-back, maybe a winger, Villa have had a hot summer. Next up, we've got Bournemouth's capture of £10 million, Justin Kluivert, who've of course had 3 pretty unsuccessful loan spells prior to joining Bournemouth. Now, he had last summer, you might remember, agreed to join Fulham, but that fell through because of work permit issues. That wasn't the case this year because he'd played in La Liga. It's going to be interesting to see what Iraola does with this Bournemouth side, because it was a punchy decision to sack Gary O'Neill. Maybe the right one, in my opinion. I think if you're going to go big and you're going to try and push up the league, you've got to make these sort of tough decisions. If he plays with wingers, does he go with Tavernier, who had a great season last year? I think it was 9 goal involvements, wasn't it? And Ouattara, who since arriving from Lorient has been one of the most electric wingers at that low level in the league in terms of his pace and his take-on ability. If that's the case, I think from Justin Kluivert's perspective, it's maybe a slightly confusing move, just because he's not a nailed-on starter, and that sounds mad. Maybe he does start over Marcus Tavernier, or maybe he comes into that 10, but then you've got Philip Billing, haven't you? I don't see how he displaces him. Not a nailed-on starter, and in a career that's kind of fizzling, I feel like it's a bit of a surprise that he hasn't gone to a club where he is going to be a nailed-on starter. Maybe Iraola is cooking up something that I can't see. Bournemouth fans, I want to hear from you. What do you think of the Kluivert signing? Of course, it's very exciting on paper, a huge name, partly because of his dad and partly because of the reputation he left Ajax with. But this is a player I don't think has started 20 games in a league season since leaving Ajax. That was half a decade ago now. So let's see what happens. Next up, we've got Flekken, who's of course gone to Brentford. I think it's probably a smart move because it's not a huge fee, £11 million. He had a really good season last year at Freiburg. It was under Christian Streich, wasn't it, last season at Freiburg. 13 clean sheets, pretty decent. And he's, of course, going to be battling out now, it seems like, with David Raya, because David Raya isn't going to Tottenham. And unless Manchester United or Chelsea come in, stump up the money, there were reports, of course, that Kepa... Glastonbury's done me in. Kepa Arrizabalaga is going to be Chelsea's #1 under Pochettino. And Man United are, of course, chasing Andre Onana. So where does that leave David Raya? Maybe he runs his contract down. If that's the case, then do you have another Strakosha situation on your hands? Maybe. But either way, £11 million for a keeper of his quality. Not massively old. I think he's still only 29. I think is smart move. Another smart move, certainly, Joao Pedro. Brighton, of course, paying £30 million to take him from Watford. It's a big old fee, but I can see why they've paid it. And I think a big part of the reason they've paid it is the versatility Joao Pedro can provide to this Brighton side. Not only can he play as a 9, he can play as a 10, he can play off the left, he can play off the right, he can link play. Very, very good with his back to goal and able to turn players. You know, you look at some of the signings they've made recently and the youngsters they've developed into roles, the likes of Enciso. You wouldn't necessarily describe him as a winger or a striker. He's not really a classic 10. These players kind of float around this forward line under Roberto De Zerbi. And here you can see his real strengths on the ball. But you can also see when you chuck him into a midfield mix, his numbers pop massively in the attacking third. This is a player who's very young, very exciting, huge dribble numbers. I think in Chris Wilder's first game in charge, he produced 10 dribbles against QPR. Very, very exciting player on the ball. I think there is work to be done off the ball with his work, but that's exactly where De Zerbi shines. I can see Joao Pedro popping under Roberto De Zerbi. Huge talent here. The next Brighton signing was, of course, James Milner. Now, because it's a free transfer, I'm kind of tempted. I'm maybe going to put him in confusing. Just because it doesn't, for me, align particularly well with Brighton's current strategy. Now, I know they've signed players like Adam Lallana in the past, and he's actually been very, very effective. And James Milner, isn't going to be a nailed-on starter. He's obviously coming in as a player in the dressing room who's got a massive amount of experience. He's probably going to be doing his coaching badges or something like that alongside his work at Brighton. I think across the last 2 seasons, it's maybe sub 10 Premier League starts, definitely sub 1,000 minutes. I think across the last 4 seasons, he's averaging about 900 minutes per campaign in the Premier League. So he's not going to be starting an awful lot of games, but he is going to provide a lot of leadership in the dressing room. I just think there are slight issues with Brighton's midfield recruitment to replace MacAllister and Caicedo so far. Now, I'm not saying that that's the fault of James Milner. I think he'll be fine there, but is he going to replace, MacAllister's goals, or when Caicedo leaves, his defensive output? I'm not sure, and therefore that makes it, to me, in terms of on the field, every game, a little bit confused. The same, I think, can be said of Mahmoud Dahoud. Horrendous injury record. A horrendous injury record. I think it was just 4 starts last season. As you can see here, missed 19 games. But, it's just reams of injury problems throughout pretty much his entire career. You look at the numbers he's been able to put up in terms of minutes on the field in the Bundesliga. They're pretty small. So again, as talented as he is, and yes, he's a free transfer, a pair of free transfers, so you can't really moan. I'm a little bit confused. Is he going to be able to produce the minutes on the field that MacAllister and Caicedo could? Is he going to be able to replace the output of those 2 midfielders? Now, of course, Billy Gilmour is certainly going to mop up an awful lot of those minutes and an awful lot of that output. But for me, it feels like there's still one midfielder short, and I don't totally know if Milner and Dahoud are the players to take him to that next level, because it feels like they're on the verge. It feels like they're on the verge of really breaking into the Big Six, being a team that could compete for Champions League places. By losing MacAllister and Caicedo and signing Milner and Dahoud, does that take them there? I don't know. I'm a bit confused about it. Okay, next up, we've got Christopher Nkunku. Chelsea signing, of course, for £52 million, coming off the back of yet another really good season. A Pokal trophy. I think it was 13 goals in the Bundesliga. The season before that, wasn't it? It was 20 goals, 13 assists in the Bundesliga. Frightening talent for a 25-year-old. Certainly a smart signing and a huge upgrade on the forward line. I think if you are letting Havertz go for 65 million and signing Nkunku for 52, it's an upgrade. I think it's an upgrade. He can play through the middle. He can play off the left. He can play as a 10. I think he probably will be a second striker. I still believe, despite the arrival of Nicolas Jackson, they need to sign a striker. That's another player I haven't got, isn't it? Nicolas Jackson. Forgot to get his picture, so we will come on to that in just a second. But yeah, Christopher Nkunku could be a contender for my number 1 so far. I'm going to do the number 1 so far at the very end, so stay tuned. As for Nicolas Jackson, I haven't got his photo here. I don't know why it hasn't loaded, but I would put him in confusing. I don't really get it. Yes, he's highly talented. Certainly had a good second half of last season. But you've got Brozier there. You've got David Datcher and Fofana there, who are young number 9s. Yes, he can play a little bit wide as well. But you've got an abundance of wingers on the books. Raheem Sterling. Pulisic is still there. Christian Nkunku has just arrived. You've still got Callum Hudson-Odoi on the books. Madueke's there. Mudrik's there. You get what I'm saying. It's a bit of a confusing one for me. I don't think he leads the line, but I also don't think he's the best reserve. Do they loan him back out? I don't know. I would have him in confusing. Chelsea fans want to hear from you about Nicolas Jackson, but also about Christopher Nkunku. Get at me in the comments below. Jefferson Lerma is up next, and I think this one probably is a smart move, given that they've lost, or didn't retain anyway, MacArthur and Milivojevic. A lot of midfield minutes to be eaten up there, given that the real midfielders in the squad, Will Hughes, Cheikh Doucouré, suppose you could class Jeff Schlupp as a central midfielder now. Eberechi Eze is kind of playing as a 10, but they're certainly short on numbers there. I think Jefferson Lerma, given his ability to just eat up minutes, 37 starts last season for Bournemouth, very consistent in the middle of the park, going both ways. I think as a free transfer, this is actually a really smart bit of business. Talking of smart bits of business, obviously MacAllister is another one that could be a contender for my number 1 so far, but at the moment I'm going to leave him in smart move For £35 million, it's an absolute no-brainer. Huge attacking output, great ball progressor, World Cup winner, good age, good injury record. Not more needs to be said about him, really. I'm quite interested to see this week that they're targeting Dominic Szoboszlai. So how does that midfield work? Is it going to be MacAllister, Fabinho, Szoboszlai? It feels quite attacking, that. It does feel quite attacking. But it's exciting, nonetheless. And God, they need midfielders. After Szoboszlai, they might even need another one. Do they go to Kefren Turam and Szoboszlai? Maybe. Another smart move, Kovacic, £25 million plus £5 million in add-ons. Absolute no-brainer. In my opinion, absolute no-brainer. Yes, he's not got the goal output of Ilkay Gundogan. Let's address that straight away. Everybody's pointing to the fact he doesn't really score goals. It's 4 goals in his last 8 seasons, isn't it, in the Premier League and La Liga since leaving Inter Milan. Not a massive goal output, and Ilkay Gundogan constantly chipping in with major goals. But in terms of slightly deeper lying stats, like I think he's in the top 10% for ball progressors in terms of passes, top 25% for ball progressors in terms of carrying, massive ball retention numbers, he's super press resistant. Pep's going to get a tune out of him. And for £25 million, it's absolutely fine. Like, it's just a smart pickup by Man City, isn't it? It's the sort of business they've done over recent years. They look at the likes of Manuel Akanji. Yes, he doesn't have a great injury record, but he won't necessarily have to because he's going to be rotated in and out of the side so much. It's just good business from everybody involved, really. Sandro Tonali is up next. I think I'm going to put in smart move, but I'm tempted to put it in confusing. I am tempted to put it in. I'll put it in there for now. £55 million is a great fee for a 23-year-old Italian international coming off the back of a decent season. Not an amazing season with Milan. But I keep seeing reports and like journalists saying, oh, he's going to unlock Bruno going forward. Tonali is not really a classic. He's not a defensive midfielder. You know, he's not Benacer. Benacer was doing a lot of the defensive midfield work in this duo. You know, Tonali is a guy who's actually going to operate in high pressure situations. He's going to press players really high at the field, which probably suits that Newcastle style of play. He's going to try and win turnovers in the middle of the park and then shift the ball very, very quickly, which is, again, kind of does suit Newcastle's style of play, doesn't it? But does that mean Bruno stays in that deep lying playmaker role? So you've got Bruno, you've probably got Joe Linton or Joe Willock on the left, and then on the right, Tonali is kind of competing with Longstaff. Well, classically, Tonali has slightly been on the left-hand side of AC Milan's midfield. I don't know, I'm kind of tempted to put it in confusing. I think it is a good signing. It's a good signing, but I'm just interested to see how operates him and the kind of flow and structure of the midfield with him in it. There's no doubt he was going to go on to become probably a club captain of AC Milan, so I'm sure AC Milan fans are pretty fuming about it. And I'm certainly interested to watch how it plays out across the course of the season because he is a great player. Next up, we've got James Maddison. Obviously, smart move. £40 million. This move was done very, very quickly, wasn't it? He was in a Tottenham shirt in 48 hours, really. I think it's an amazing price. I know that he only had 1 year left on his contract and they're relegated, but in the modern world, like 40, 50 million pounds is the going rate for a human that plays football. Maddison's creative numbers, one of the best in the Premier League, only going to get better at a better side, feeding better players like Heung-min Son, like Harry Kane, like Dejan Kulusevski. I think he works really nicely as one of the 8s in that Ange Postecoglou system that's a little bit more advanced in that half space that can put balls into the box. You know, shot creating action numbers are massive. You can pretty much guarantee 20 goal involvements in Premier League football. If you look at his last 2 seasons in the league, stunningly good player, great character around the dressing room. Another contender for my number 1 slot, I think. Finally, you've got Vicario, of course, the Spurs keeper they signed. Just because I've got to have someone in there, I'll put him in not convinced. I think it's more underwhelming, isn't it? Given that they were so close to David Raya, supposedly agreed personal terms, and there was about a 10 million gap in valuation. David Raya, for me, the better goalkeeper. I'm not going to lie, I haven't seen Vicario endless amounts. But given that Raya, sensational distributor, really good shot stopper, great in the air, comes to collect crosses, good age profile, and also, most importantly for a goalkeeper, Premier League proven would have slotted straight into that Tottenham Hotspur side. it's just a bit of a risk. You know, 14th last season with Empoli. Yes, put up great post-shot expected goals numbers. He's a massive frame in net as well, so really good shot stopper. Very confident with the ball at his feet as well. But would I rather have had David Raya? Yes, I think so. So, slightly underwhelming. Maybe not convinced is harsh. I would probably change that to underwhelmed. Okay, while I've been shooting this, we've got a name to add in. Mason Mount, because he has agreed to join Manchester United. We're going to call this a confirmed deal. The fee's been agreed, £55 million plus £5 million in add-ons. Of course, personal terms were agreed a couple of weeks ago, and it feels unlikely he's going to fail a medical. Now, I'm going to put this in smart move, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to get pelters for that. But look, Manchester United need a number 8 who is on the front foot, attacking, can score goals, can create chances, but is also an extreme hard worker. Somebody good in defensive and attacking transition who can lead a press. I mean, if you write all of those things under the name of Mason Mount, it's pretty much perfect compatibility. And over the last few years, Mason Mount has taken an awful lot of stick from rival football fans, but Chelsea fans absolutely have loved the guy. 2-time player of the year, consistent contributor in terms of creating chances, scoring goals, but mainly working hard off the ball, as I've already spoken about. They love him. And I think Man United fans are quickly going to realise what underrated player he is. I actually do think he's underrated. Again, I'm sure I'm going to get stick for that, because people seem to think he's rubbish. I don't know where that weird narrative developed when, across the last 5 years, he's comfortably been one of Chelsea's 3 best players. And to sign a direct rival, that's what Chelsea are to Manchester United, a direct rival, one of their best players, that's a good age profile, for 50 million quid, 55 million pounds, whatever it ended up being, despite the fact, yes, I'm aware he only had 1 year left on his contract, I still think it's a really good signing, even if it is a £10 million overpay. You know, if United had got the deal done for £50 million, everybody would be saying this is a great deal for United. At £60 million, suddenly it's rubbish. No, it's a slight overpay, but United are taking a direct rival star. I think this is a smart move. I think if it's perfectly for Ten Hag, I think it's a good move for Mason Mount, and Chelsea get a good fee. It works for all parties. So that leaves me to select my number 1 summer signing so far. I think it's between Declan Rice, Nkunku, MacAllister, and Maddison. I actually think I'm going to go for Christopher Nkunku. I think I called him Christian earlier. My brain is still in like meltdown mode from Glastonbury. But yeah, I'm going to go for Nkunku. I think for £52 million, you're getting one of the most highly coveted striker/wingers on the planet. A goal-scoring machine. Really, really solid off-the-ball numbers. He's Pochettino's wet dream. I think £52 million is an amazing fee. I think Declan Rice would probably have been up there if it wasn't £105 million. And MacAllister versus Nkunku, I'd go Nkunku. And then Maddison, also very close. But I'm just going to urge on the side of Christopher Nkunku. What do you guys at home think? No, let me know in the comments below. Who would you have had as your number 1 summer signing so far? And who do you think is going to creep in there by the end of the window? If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button, hit subscribe. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. We'll see you later.